Welcome to the Darkstream, Vox Day, voxday.net, and unauthorized.tv. So thanks for tuning in. This is another UATV exclusive because we're going to be talking about some things that we don't necessarily want to particularly broadcast outside the community. I mean, yeah, the word obviously will get out. It's public information, but we don't have to start that way. We don't have to begin that way, if you know what I mean. Some nice news today. First of all, the War and Peace is the new 2-volume set has been making it out to people. I just got mine, and I have to say they are some of the best looking books I've ever seen. They're not just some of the best books that we've done. They're just awesome, and you can see they're very hefty. You could actually do a pretty serious workout with them. But these are the Libraria behind me on the shelves. You can see up to my well, it's to my right. I guess it'd be screen left. You can see that next to the Cambridge Medieval Histories, the War and Peace library editions are on the shelves there, and it's pretty cool. We're now those 4 shelves are almost completely Castalia, and so it's just it's such a remarkable achievement for the whole community that we've been able to get together and produce some of the most beautiful books in the world. Nothing that Folio's doing matches what we're doing, and you have to pay $750 just to get something that's reasonably comparable. Don't get me wrong, they do some nice stuff. We acquired a copy of their Thucydides just to be able to compare it, and it's nice. But when you consider the fact that you can literally buy 7 library books for the price of that one, I mean, there's just no comparison. Anyhow, what I wanted to talk about tonight is, believe it or not, related to Rebels Run. And the reason that I'm talking about Rebels Run, which I don't do very much, mostly because there's nothing to say about it, is that apparently the trial began today for a gentleman by the name of Wolfgram, and he's the man who was predominantly responsible for the scam. Now, we've still got our doubts about founding net, about the producer who actually sent this guy the money, his company the money, but we don't have obviously the U.S. attorneys have not made their decisions yet with regards to any of that, but they did about 2 years ago, with the help of the film company and with the help of our lawyer. They did manage to arrest Wolfgram. In fact, I need to double check what's his last name here. Let's see. Yeah, James Wolfgram is the guy's name, and so he was apparently the architect. He was definitely the short-term beneficiary, and Rebels Run was just a drop in the bucket of what apparently was an over $330 million operation. And so and there's been crazy stuff about this. The trial was supposed to begin about a year ago, but what he kept doing is changing his lawyer right before the trial date, filing motions the day before the trial that the prosecutors had to answer. So they kept putting it off and putting it off and putting it off. Well, finally, The trial began today. Don't know anything about it. It's scheduled, I think, go on for 2 weeks at most. So we'll have some idea what's going on. But if this particular document, which was, as according to Mr. Wolfgram's custom, filed right before it started, I don't think it's going to go terribly well. And here's why. I can show you the, I was sent this late last night by the VFM lawyer, who was, I have to say, genuinely amused by it. And I think you'll see why. In fact, at first when I started looking at it, I thought it was a joke. But let's check. I mean, I know you're not lawyers. I'm not a lawyer. But trust me, I think you can keep up with this one. So I'm going to read it here because it's probably hard for you to make it out on the screen, but you can follow along, I'm sure. This was filed with the U.S. District Attorney Court in Utah on August 21st, and it's CO Sovereign Hierarchy Usufruct Galaxial, authorized agent with power of attorney in fact in Pennsylvania, and to the judge, the Honorable Howard C. Nielsen, Jr. Letter of rogatory. I, Sovereign Hierarchy Usufruct Galaxial, Sovereign Hierarchy Usufruct Galaxial, in my private capacity as bailer for bailee of the debtor, I accept as value for consideration in return for value pursuant to accepting gifts, 31 U.S.C. Section 3113, appoint the court as temporary trustee of the trust created by the criminal complaint security in the court's books, and order the trustee to exchange the complaint security for a dismissal order security. So the court is being created a temporary trustee of the security, the bail, presumably. Basically he's saying if the court keeps the money, then the case should be dismissed. Should you, the trustee, fail to perform, you will have breached the trust and lose his appointment and a federal tax inquiry into the whereabouts of the funding for this alleged criminal infraction. I am now the sole trustee for the beneficiary, which collapses the trust under trust law and under statute section 402A1 of the Uniform Trust Code. I, Sovereign Hierarchy Usufruct Galaxial, order the grantor to obey my specific instruction and directions to exchange the securities. As a trustee of said account with power of attorney, in fact, do hereby accept this gracious offer as value and consideration and return for value pursuant to 31 U.S.C. Section 3113, accepting gifts. And then the federal rules of civil procedures are cited. Rule 60, relief from a judgment or order. A, corrections based on clerical mistakes, oversights, and omissions. The court may correct a clerical mistake or a mistake arising from oversight or omission whenever one is found in a judgment, order, or other part of the record. The court may do so on a motion or on its own, with or without notice. But after an appeal has been docketed in the appellate court and while it is pending, such a mistake may be corrected only with an appellate court's leave. So the court can make corrections until an appeal has been docketed. Fine. Grounds for relief from a final judgment, order, or proceeding. On motion and just terms, a court may relieve a party or its legal representation from a final judgment, order, proceeding for the following reasons. 1, mistake, which is highlighted. Inadvertent surprise or excusable neglect. 2, newly discovered evidence that with reasonable diligence could not have been discovered in time to move for a new trial under Rule 59B. 3, fraud. whether previously called intrinsic or extrinsic misrepresentation or misconduct by an opposing party. 4, the judgment is void. 5, the judgment has been satisfied, released, or discharged. It is based on an earlier judgment that's been reversed or vacated, or applying it prospectively is no longer equitable. Or 6, any other reason that justifies relief. Then there's a letter of relief. Chapter 1, Alcohol and Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau, Department of the Treasury. Surety of notice of relief from bond liability, surety notice of relief from bond liability. Notice to principal. A surety on a bond may at any time notify the principal in writing that the surety desires to be relieved of liability under the bond. Anyhow, there's more stuff about bonds. It's not interesting. So then he says, Dear Judge, this letter serves as a letter of rogatory directing the use my private capacity as bailor for the bailee. James Wolfgram, aka Samisi New, date of birth September 24th, 1978. I hereby accept as value and consideration and return for value the following: the full and complete release of James Wolfgram from any and all obligations and liabilities arising from the probation agreement. The full and complete release of any and all claims, demands, and causes of action that may arise from the probation agreement. The full complete release of any of all rights, interests, and remedies that may arise from the probation agreement. The full complete release of any and all damages, costs, and expenses that may arise from the probation agreement. Sincerely accepted and for value and return for value and consideration without dishonor. Please offset this billing by routing through and ledgering against the private exemption account of Sovereign Hierarchy Usufruct Galaxial with his private offset account number, whatever that is, for credit to the Secretary of the Treasury. This looks insane. It's somewhat tied, I think, to the sovereign citizen stuff that, while it has some basis in reality, is very seldom, if ever, recognized in any genuine capacity by the courts. I have a feeling that one of the things that the lawyer said is, I don't know if he's going for an insanity plea or what, but what usufruct means is it's the use of, it's having the use of certain things. So he said, I don't know if he's trying to claim that he's retroactively granting himself the right to use the money and then trade it for his freedom or something. But anyhow, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. The reason that this court case is of some interest to us is that the soonest that the investors can possibly get their money back, or rather that VFM can get them the investment money back, would be after a guilty verdict. Because assuming that he's found guilty, and frankly, if that's the best, it sounds like he's representing himself now, because no lawyer is going to, he had to file it himself because no lawyer is going to file it. That's a good way to get disciplined by the judge. What's most likely is going to happen is he's going to be found guilty, and then prior to the sentencing, he'll be given some opportunity to make restitution. Now, it should theoretically be possible for him to make restitution to VFM for the money that was stolen from it. Again, like I've said from the beginning, I'm not holding my breath about any of it. My faith in the U.S. justice system is about as close to non-existent as one can possibly get, while still recognizing that it does technically on some level exist. But we'll see. I mean, it went somewhere. it still is somewhere, and the total amount involved is so much greater than the VFM amount that and because of the fact that they were integral to helping them make the case and so forth, they're most likely at the front of the line if anything is able to be recovered. So we'll have to see. Now again, on the other hand, when you look at the way that these fraudsters and scammers are treated, the fact that they might get 5 years or 7 years for stealing a couple $100 million. I mean, that's actually a pretty good business if you think about it, if you can manage it. So who knows? But there is some small reason for optimism, and so as we are always relentlessly optimistic, I think it behooves us to be optimistic, and certainly it doesn't look like the bad guy is putting up much of an effective defense. So anyhow, I just thought that that was just so odd and bizarre. I never brought up any of the previous filings and attempt to deal with things just because there's nothing really to talk about. He changed his lawyer. It's going to be another 3 months now. Personally, I'm just very grateful to the lawyers who have continued to track this, continue to stay on top of it, and continue to keep us informed. But it's a little bit ironic, and of course we know from all of the crazy stuff in the political world that the FBI is not an organization that you would tend naturally to put a great deal of confidence in. But there are still, in every big organization, there are good people just trying to do their job. And I can state for a fact that, believe it or not, that is true of the FBI as well. Now, they may not be able to do their job. They may not be permitted to do their job properly by their corrupt superiors and so forth. But in this case, it appears that they have, to a certain extent, been able to do so. So that's the info dump on the latest with regards to the criminal prosecution of James Wolfgram, the Rebels Run scammer. In other news, Alex McCree has launched a new Kickstarter. So if you're, I'll put that up on the blog soon, but if you're a fan of Axe, you're probably going to want to check out what he's got going there. And the big news today on the cultural front is that there's an interesting individual showing up on, let's see if we can pop this up here, fire up a little web page, and Pulse. There we go. Let's move it over here a bit, see how we can do this. No thanks. So what's really interesting is if we look at Fandom Pulse, check out the name. I'm going to make this a bit bigger, I think. Okay, there we go. And then I'll move myself above it. We're getting fancy here, guys. Of course, if I was really fancy, I'd have all this laid out properly ahead of time. But anyhow, so look at the names on the pieces. Watchmen creator Alan Moore attacks Gamergate, Comicsgate, and Donald Trump, saying fandom has toxified the room or the world. That's a Fandom Pulse article, okay. But here we go. Call of Duty Black Ops 6 actor defends non-binary. The byline is John F. Trent. Now, if you don't know who John F. Trent is, John F. Trent is the best journalist in comics. He's one of the best journalists in the whole general space of entertainment, and he ran Bounding into Comics very successfully, um, and was a great friend to Archaven and to Castalia. He's a big supporter of Chuck Dixon, um, and other good creators. And unfortunately, Bounding into Comics got converged, and not only did that lead to John Trent's resignation, but it also led to John Della Rose getting bounced out of there as well, not long after that. And so so he went to another place, I don't remember the name of it, and was very successful building that up and helping that become very successful. And now he's also doing some work with Fandom Pulse. And so I'm very optimistic that, you know, John and John have always been simpatico. And so I think it's going to be very interesting to see how this goes. And I think this is an incredibly positive development for our community. It's a very positive development for Archaven, Arctoons, et cetera, because you know, the more talent that we have across the various components of the industry, the more success that all the different areas are going to have. You know, Archaven produces excellent stuff, but too many people don't know about it. You know, there's not enough people that know about it. Arctoons has good stuff out there every single day, and great stuff on with some degree of regularity. There's already better content on Arctoons than there is on Webtoons, but we don't reach anywhere nearly as many people. Kajia says, great to have John teaming up with John Della Rose. Both are great men of great character, and it's awesome to have them on this side of the culture war. Yeah, they've been, I mean, you know, JDA has done a amazing job of just doggedly improving his game, doggedly building up his own following, his own support. He's been a great supporter of Archaven. He's now working very, very closely with Archaven. In fact, you know, Archaven is now, Archaven has essentially replaced Rislandia in terms of putting this, you know, publishing his stuff. We're going to be publishing his first novel with Archaven, or his first Archaven related novel, Alt Hero Covert. It's the first novel set in the world of Alt Hero, and entirely his creation. He obviously borrowed some characters, the concepts, etc., but the story is entirely his, and it's quite good. I was very pleased with it, and you know, we hope to do other Alt Hero related novels, recruit a few authors to do them and so forth, but I wanted the first one or two, and the backers will be receiving them, you know, the ebooks as promised, and we'll put them out, put them in paperback initially, I think. But you know, it's a really fun and exciting thing to be able to be doing world building with younger people of talent. And Skydog says, JDA is like a honey badger with a sombrero. He's a machine. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to me, it's really fascinating that the way that Larry Correa has such a problem with him. You know, I'm not usually prone to theories of, oh, so-and-so feels threatened, because I can't imagine why Larry ever would feel threatened. But then I wonder also if possibly that whole leading Hispanic voice in science fiction might get under his skin a little bit. You know, I mean, the thing is, Larry's got a pretty thick skin. Larry's accustomed to people attacking him and saying way worse things about him than JDA ever has about him. But so it always kind of puzzled me, like, Larry, why, why, why does this one guy bother you so much? And to be honest, I suspect that it's because John reminds Larry too much of who he used to be. Um, because Larry is very much a self-made man in the same way that JDA is. Skydog says, in California, the Portuguese were highly racist to Mexicans. I mean, maybe there's an element of that too. I don't know. I'm not privy to that interaction. I have I have no idea. Um, Other than on the football field, I have no idea what the Portuguese like or don't like. We do have one Portuguese team, or we did have one Portuguese team in our league, Lusitanos, um, and I was friends with probably four of them. Four of them were like my former teammates. One of them actually was Ender's coach for a while. Really good guy. Um, and you know, I don't know much about them other than they, they were always really cheap. I don't mean playing wise, but in the dinners afterwards, we always knew that whatever they'd be serving would be like the cheapest possible thing they could get. But on the plus side, so for a couple of years, their dinners were just very, very skippable. But then they got a decent cook. I mean, it was funny. They went from being like the worst place in the league to one of the best places in the league to have dinner after the game. But it was still like, you know, made out of like used tires and roadkill, all that sort of thing. But but it's not uncommon for older guys to resent and dislike and not want to see a mirrored image of themselves, because when the more successful that a man becomes, the more he likes to sort of believe he was there all along. Most people don't like to be reminded of their humble beginnings. They like to subscribe, once they've arrived, they like to play the game that John Scully does, which is the upper middle class game of everything being effortless. And that was, being from the upper middle class myself, it was difficult for me to do what was necessary in order to become successful in the environment in which I found myself. I was not designed, and I was not brought up to succeed by, scratching and clawing. I was brought up to succeed by connections and working hard, but also in a way that didn't look like working. That's how you're supposed to do it in the upper middle class. That's why you see frauds like Scalzi, and frauds like Neil Gaiman pretending, acting as if, oh, it was just their talent and stuff, when those guys worked harder and continue to work harder on their perceived image than anybody I've ever met or known. I mean, Gaiman spent so much time on social media just curating his image. I'm frankly shocked that he managed to find the time to allegedly sexually assault anyone. I mean, it's no wonder that so many of his alleged sexual assaults were connected to book tours and book signings and stuff. I mean, the guy never stopped. Scalzi is constantly selling himself everywhere he goes, every time he opens his mouth. But he's also very good at making it look like he's not. You know, I mean, like I'll give you an example. He wrote an entire book, submitted it to Tor, but he submitted it in a way that allowed him to evade the slush pile and go directly to the top editor at Tor while pretending that it wasn't a submission. And then, oh, isn't it amazing that they want to publish it? Because I was just sending it in to him because I thought he might like to see how it would be possible to do a Heinlein pastiche. I mean, that's just a blatant, ludicrous, obvious lie. He desperately wanted to get it published. And, you know, more power to him. It worked. You know, it worked beyond his wildest imagination, I'm sure. But why lie about it? Because you know, he, even though he was poor, he grew up going to a private school on scholarship, so he learned the same sort of social mores that I was brought up in. I mean, why do you think I recognize John as such a fraud? You know, because he wasn't one of us. He isn't one of us. Never was. And it's only obvious if you are, you know. But, you know, what is a strength in its own milieu becomes a weakness when you leave it. And I left it. You know, I left that world when I was, you know, 23. And I wanted to do my own thing. You know, all my daddy's connections and all our family connections and, you know, all that stuff did me no good in the gaming industry. You know, nobody gave a damn. Nobody cared. Hang on, I gotta switch batteries here, so I'm going to turn off the camera for a second. We'll just leave the video on. I was prepared for this, although I think I need a new battery or something for that one, because that one said I had an hour and 15 minutes, and 39 minutes is not an hour and 15 minutes. At least not any mathematics that I understand. All right. Okay. And we're zooming in. Let's see if we can get back here properly. And there we go. We are back. So, anyhow, I should say it's not entirely true in that all the connections and stuff did no good, but some of the manners, behavior, language, etc., all that sort of thing, you know, did serve me well. That's why I could walk right into a newspaper and convince them to let me write a column. You know, when you're dealing with you know, educated Ivy League or Ivy League wannabe editors, the fact that you went to a special boy college yourself, you know, means that you pass that hurdle. In the game industry, none of that mattered. You know, none of it mattered at all. And then, of course, moving to Europe completely demolished any ability to rely upon, you know, the web of social connections, because, you know, different country, different language, etc., etc. I mean, you're literally, you have a certain, maybe you have a certain amount of status just because, if you're an English speaker in the right neighborhood, that kind of stuff. But we didn't embrace that. When we first moved over here, Space Bunny was eagerly sought after to join both the American Women's Club and the English Ladies Club. And from if we were trying to make it work that way, that would have been the right thing to do. We would have been in with the right people, but we didn't do that. And so it wasn't until 2015. Ironically, the one thing that I did that worked well, the one thing that I did that mattered, was start the blog and put up a blog poster for every day and build up a following over time that, much to my surprise, turned out to be big enough to do projects like Castalia Library, big enough to support something like Castalia House, big enough to create Unauthorized. I mean, I don't know if any of you really realize how totally remarkable that is. I mean, even though we've had struggles, even though we're at about now 40% of our peak, although Big Bear is working very, very hard on building that up. If you notice, I'm starting to more and more just do unauthorized exclusives. We've got some, plans that are going to be playing out over the next, 6 to 9 months. We're going to get back to where we were, and we're going to grow beyond where we were. Because we have the community here between us, the Bears, the Razor Force, etc., etc. I mean, we could be and we should be probably closer to between 25,000 and 50,000 subscribers. Once we get there, then that's when we can start thinking again about doing some of these more doing better video entertainment options other than just streaming and that sort of thing. Especially with AI, there's some exciting stuff coming around the pike there, and that will really open up opportunities, particularly for unauthorized. So, but the point is that it wasn't until 2015 and a very significant conversation with Mike Cernovich, where he he literally told me, your biggest problem is that you're an upper middle class pussy and you're not willing to ask anyone for help. You're not willing to ask anybody for money. He said, you're trying to do the impossible. You're trying to do everything by yourself. You can't. And he was absolutely right. And that's when we first, the guy who did this, he's literally the guy who did the layout for this, created this design. He's our best book production guy. Just phenomenal job. And he was the first volunteer that he'd been trying to volunteer for like a year and a half, and I was just like, no, I don't want to take advantage of you. I don't. And he came up with a very cogent argument, which in the aftermath of Mike's comments, I had to take seriously, because he said, what did you get paid for all those blog posts that you've done for the past, what was it? It's 2015. So he said, for the last 12 years. He said, you've been doing this blog for 12 years. What have you been paid? I said, nothing. I said, actually, I never got paid for the WorldNet Daily column either. That was just, kind of my gift to the world, as it were. And he said, "What makes you think you're so much better than me?" I said, "What are you talking about? I don't think I'm better than you." He said, "Why is it that you're allowed to volunteer your time, that you're allowed to contribute your time to what you believe to be a worthy cause, but I'm not?" And that's when I said, yeah, that is kind of a jackass position. So when you put the two things together, number one, scratch and claw. Scratch and claw, make progress, move forward, get that first win, build on that first win, get that second win, build on them both. You know, that's when I realized that I needed to be open to this. And that's why now, as you know, I'm not at all shy about asking for help. I'm not at all shy about asking for volunteers. And the reason that I'm not is because I'm never going to ask anybody to do what I wouldn't be willing to do myself. You know? And I try to help others too. Like, for example, Autark is going to be doing some kind of anthology or something. I think it's related to the, to his axe system. And when he said, "Hey, would you be willing to contribute it?" I said yes, immediately. You know, if somebody like if somebody that I know who's a proven contributor to our side of the culture wars wants my help, I will provide it if I can. You know, obviously, I can't do 99% of what people will throw at me. You know, you know, I can tell you right now, if you say, "I've written this thing, would you look at it?" The answer is not only no, but hell no. I'm not a slush pile reader. You know, I am a author and a publisher, and I'm a good editor, and I only edit a very, very small number of people. And if your name is not Chuck Dixon or John C. Wright, the answer is probably no. It's not offense. You know, I intend no offense, and I'm not denigrating your work. I'm just saying that you haven't proven yourself. I'm not the guy to provide you with proof, and I'm definitely not the guy to tell you you're good enough and people will like you. Especially when it is so freaking easy now. You know, ebooks and Amazon and all that sort of thing. It is easier now than ever before just to get your stuff out there. Is it easy to stand out? No, but it's not easy for me to stand out. You know, I have fewer, I mean, despite my very, very modest amount of internet fame, despite the fact that I've had newspapers around the world writing hit pieces on me, you know, Sigma Games still hasn't reached 5,000 free subscribers yet. How is that possible? How is it that there's 50 billion TikToks and YouTube references to Sigma and less than 5,000 people are interested in what the originator of that term has to say? You know, there's way more people that are interested in what a Kardashian has to say. It's just the way it is. You know, being able to, even if you get attention for something, you got 15 minutes and the clock is ticking. So, you know, you better make as much hay as you can in that 15 minutes, and then move forward with whatever remains. And that's fine. I'm not complaining. What would be the point? That's the way the world is. And so, all you can do is do the best you can do, with what you got. Now, obviously, I could do a lot more in terms of self-promotion. Agreeing to give interviews would be a good idea. But for someone like me, I'm not trying to build a career anymore. I'm closer to retirement age. I'm way closer to retirement age than I am to getting started. So I am who I am. I'm never going to be famous. I'm never going to be well regarded. Not like back when I was younger, I felt like I could be an Umberto Eco style public intellectual. I'm one of the very few writers out there who has written best-selling fiction and nonfiction. I have a much broader range than most of the writers who are more successful, more well-known than I am. It's fine. I had my shot, had some moderate success. At this point, it doesn't matter. Which, just so you understand, this is a very freeing thing. It means I can write what I want to write. Because of you guys, I not only can write what I want to write, but it'll actually get out there. It'll actually be successful. Hypergamouse and Sigma Game are already successful. Let's see what the Kickstarter is. It's funny, they just did a new let's see, settings. They just did a new update for this software and it doesn't switch as quickly as it did before. Okay, I need to get something here. Let's see. All right. Just needed to figure out what the web link was. Okay. Let's put it in dollars since, oops. So 27 days to go and we're at 82,000, which is fantastic. I would have, to be honest, I would have loved to see the whole thing go north of 150 just for PR purposes, but this is really good. This passed the stretch goal 3, and we can officially say that what did we promise for stretch goal 3? So we added the 6-page introduction. Okay. Stretch goal 3 will be variant paperback and hardcover covers by Midnight's War artist Adamir Leal, and will be unlocked if the campaign reaches 80. So that has been unlocked, and I need to get Adamir on that. But he's already been contacted. He's already agreed to do it. My point is that it's already successful. Both books are already successful. Kajia says, 700 francs of that campaign is from me. Please don't entice me further with too cool of stretch goals. Hey, look, your support is fantastic. Stay where it is. Leave it where it is. Pitch it. Let others know about it. We're going to get some cool new variant covers that people can add if they like. The Rogue Roman says, "You are the sort of person who is never famous until 300 years after their death." To be honest, it wouldn't surprise me. Um, it's just the way that things can be, and I'm happy that I've had the success that I've had. I mean, look at the books behind me. I mean, I stopped being excited about seeing my name on a book spine about 3 weeks after the publication of Rebel Moon. I'm not going to lie, it was super exciting for those 3 weeks. I mean, that just, when I started wanting to write, ironically enough, when I was in Japan. I met a guy named Mike from Northwestern University, and good guy. He and his friend were there together, kind of like my friend Craig and I were. And it was really interesting to see, or he had this plan to just get a job in the post office because he really wanted to be a writer. And I'm very curious to find out what happened to him, like if he did achieve that. But I remember it made me think, well, I could write. I feel like I could write. I read a lot. I could write. And I wrote a short story I lost. Don't know what happened to it. I then wrote a short story, which I submitted to Asimov and was rejected without comment, and deservedly so. But that's what got me going, and that's when I started going, boy, wouldn't it be amazing to see your name on a book? so of course, I write my first book under pen. And the funny thing is, I got more of a thrill out of that than I ever did about having like my picture in the newspaper, because I've been having my picture in the newspaper since I was a little kid. There's a picture of me and Matt Blair from the Vikings when I was like in, I don't know, 3rd grade. So the whole newspaper thing was, and then there was like the readathon, the spelling bees, all that kind of stuff. So getting media attention. Oh, also this might. You're going to give me a hard time about this, I'm sure. My wife certainly does. But in 1st grade was the first time I think that my name was mentioned in the newspaper. And it was a complete fraud, total fraud. All I can say in my own defense is that it was totally unintentional. All I was trying to do was cheat on my homework. we had this assignment from our 1st grade teacher to draw an animal, and so now I can't draw, and so anyhow, I just went and found an encyclopedia, and I traced. I believe it was a wood duck. I don't know why I always like wood ducks, but I did. So I traced a wood duck, just with a pencil, and then handed it in. Got to do a drawing of an animal. They didn't say don't trace it. They just said draw an animal, and I knew I couldn't draw, so I just did that, and I didn't think anything of it. But apparently the assignment was somehow related to I don't know if like the teacher just saw it and thought it was good and turned it in, or whether all of them got turned into this, but somehow it was in some sort of citywide or maybe even statewide competition, and it ended up in the I believe it was the Star Tribune newspaper. It wasn't the Star Tribune then. It would have been the Minneapolis Star or the Minneapolis Tribune. I'm not sure which. But I think I still have my mother's keeping my mother's clipping of it. But I was horrified even then, because I was just like, it's like I had had my name and grade 1 and all this stuff. And so my mother believed until I was like 22 or 23 that I was a good artist. And she was like, one day we were talking, and she says, "Oh, it's just too bad that you didn't really keep up with your art." I was like, "My what?" She said, "Well, you were such a good artist, you used to draw so well." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" I mean, the only drawing I ever did was my Stickman edition of the Iliad, which was painstakingly constructed over 2 years of math classes where I wasn't paying attention. And so that's another story. I've told that one before. But anyhow, so I had to tell I said to my mother, she says, no, but you even won an award when you were quite young. And I was like, "Mom, I traced that." She's like, "You did what?" I said, "I just traced it. It was homework, I mean, I'm totally unapologetic about this. If you're gonna assign a kid make work, just don't blame him if he comes up with a way of just getting the make work done. But anyhow, but yeah, that was that incident might account for my my just general trying to avoid the media, for good or for ill. I should see if I could find that. That'd be hilarious to put it up on the blog. I should put award-winning artist on my resume. But yeah, so for all of you guys, all you gammas who like to think that I'm a fraud or whatever, there's your evidence. There's your very solid evidence. In first grade, I traced the wood duck. By the way, Rogue Roman says, by the way, I got a Rowena Moral art book in the mail today, and there was a page on War in Heaven. Yeah, that was the image that she did for the book. It was a great, really well done. And in fact, there is actually a partially done similar image that she did for The World in Shadow, which unfortunately was never finished because Pocket Books decided to imitate the Left Behind series in terms of its styling rather than stay with the fantasy route, which was a big mistake because they sold 4 times more with the Rowena cover than they did with the Left Behind imitation. So, yes, that was a big mistake on their part. Not as big a mistake as keeping me and getting rid of Dan Brown. A lot of people don't realize that The War in Heaven and Angels and Demons, which was Dan Brown's first book, were released on the same day by the same publisher, and The War in Heaven sold quite a bit better, so they dropped Dan Brown. And then he went to a new publisher and wrote the Da Vinci Code. So, obviously, they should have gotten rid of me and kept him. But, everybody makes mistakes. So, anyhow, that's all I've got to say. Thanks, those of you who have supported the Hypergamos campaign, thank you very much. If you haven't, or if you're interested in Sigma Game, I do encourage you to check it out and consider supporting it. They're both going to be excellent books, no question. And in fact, Lacey's just done some really cool stuff that I think we're going to use for the end papers on the leather editions. So I think you're really going to like it. On that note, I wish you all a good evening. I'm Vox Day, and hopefully we'll see some justice with regards to the James Wolfgram trial. I'm Vox Day. This is the Darkstream.